So does any of the advice change as women are going through the menopause and post-menopause and so on and so on?
So everything becomes more important. So, and you also need maybe a slightly bit more protein. I also like to, depending on where they are in their exercise regime, actually shorter, sharper workouts are better for many women. Recovery from exercise is a little bit harder, but actually exercise is even more important because we know that the drop in estrogen can impact muscle mass and bone mineral density, which is mitigated at least a little bit by exercise. So that's really important. The nutrition side doesn't massively change, but even more important is the protein. So like everything is the same, but kind of becomes that bit more important. Couple that with it also being potentially the hardest time of a woman's life to go through. And,
Right.
you know, anyone who's experienced just like PMS symptoms, you'll know that that's really tough. Now imagine that like on steroids times 100 and fluctuating estrogen levels that don't fully make any sense. So you don't know exactly when it's going to happen. You often get a lot of side effects like lack of sleep, which can also impact hunger, which can impact mood. Estrogen can impact, or drop in estrogen can impact mood as well. Hot flushes, like there are a whole list of symptoms. The most important thing to me is to treat the person, not the disease or the period of life that they're going through. So if I treated every perimenopausal woman the same, it would be ridiculous, because actually some clients I have kind of sail through the period and don't have that many side effects at all. Other women, it is deliberating and completely changes their life for a period of time until they maybe go on HRT or maybe like things settle down for various reasons or various treatments. But it really depends on the individual and what symptoms they have and how they're coping with them and how I can help support that. I mean, again, like the number one thing to do is focus on lifestyle changes. That's like the first port of call. But you're asking people
and
to
those lifestyle
prioritize.
changes are what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, or just like diet, essentially diet and exercise, right? And getting in enough sleep and like looking after yourself a bit, getting in enough exercise and movement. But it's also simultaneously potentially the hardest time in your life to do that.
Right.
So
that's tough.
You can see how that
that
is a challenge.
Just maybe a good time to find a trainer like you who can help, right? And who understands. No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you take any supplements?
I take vitamin D. I take fish oils. I take creatine. I think that's it at the moment. And then protein, which I don't really see as a supplement, but I guess.
These are the most evidence-based supplements? Like, should everyone be taking creatine, in your opinion?
Unless there's a specific reason not to, like significant kidney or liver issues or something. But even then, I would just speak to your doctor first.
Right.
Again, like, it's not essential, but could you ever get like saturated creatine stores without taking creatine? No, you'd have to eat like a ridiculous amount of meat, which then would impact everything else you could have in your diet.
You're not getting them from the plants.
You'll get, so this is what's actually very important. If you do have a primarily plant-based diet, or you've reduced the amount of animal products that you're consuming, taking creatine has a huge benefit, and not just from a building muscle standpoint, but actually a cognitive benefit. So they see that in vegetarians, people who take creatine have increased cognitive ability. I think that's saturated in people who are meat eaters generally, in that when they take creatine, they don't see this elevation in cognitive function, essentially meaning that vegetarians probably have lower cognitive function if they're not taking creatine. You don't take creatine, do you?
So interesting. I actually
just judging by your facial expression.
I'm very animated, and I think that's so interesting, which is why I'm being animated. I do take creatine, but I'm quite sporadic with it. And when I do, I tend to take like 10 grams, which is double the 5 grams, but I'm also much larger than some people and da-da-da-da. But I had never thought of creatine as a cognitive enhancer. I'd always thought of it as a kind of musculoskeletal performance enhancer in some respects.
Yeah, there's actually really interesting research in terms of dementia and Alzheimer's as well, reduction in risk, but it's quite like preliminary, I guess, and hard thing to study over that period of time, but there is like mechanistic rationale for it.
Oh, that's amazing. So basically, yeah, everyone should,
yeah,
men and women of all ages should be having a creatine supplement. This is really cool.